My name is Michael. I am 81 years old. If you've ever believed that working hard can buy you a better life, then I am living proof of that belief. I believed it for almost my entire life. I believed that if I made enough money, everything else would fall into place on its own. Family, time, peace, life. That belief sounds reasonable. Society rewards it. Other people admire it. And I was proud of it for a very long time. But here's the thing. No one tells you directly, money doesn't take your life away all at once. It takes it one very small day at a time so slowly that you don't realize you're living less and less. I didn't go bankrupt. I didn't fail. I didn't collapse. I succeeded by every measurable standard. And because of that, I never stopped to ask a very simple question. When was I actually living? People tend to think that great loss must come with great tragedy. But in my case, the most painful thing wasn't what I lost. It was what I never managed to have, even though I did everything right. I'm not saying this to shock you. I'm just starting from a very ordinary truth, one it took me more than 80 years to be honest enough to face. I'm not saying this to prove that I'm right. At this age, right and wrong don't carry much meaning anymore. I'm saying it because there's no longer enough time to keep telling stories that sound comforting. If you're waiting for advice, I don't have any. And I'm not here to fix the past. My past is already done. It doesn't need further justification. It just needs to be called by its proper name. I'm speaking because my body reminds me every day that everything has a limit. Mornings that start more slowly. Evenings where I'm tired earlier. Appointments postponed because I'm not feeling well today. Time is no longer stretching forward. It's narrowing very quietly. I'm also not speaking to ask for sympathy. I lived a life many people would call successful. I have assets, status, proof that I was not lazy. I'm missing only one thing. I can't go back and earn more of time lived as a human being, not as a plan. If I were younger, I probably wouldn't speak this way. I would soften things. I would add a few lines to make it sound more hopeful. But at 81, I no longer have a reason to do that. I'm speaking because this may be the last time I tell this story as honestly as possible. Not to change my life, but so that at least the years I have left don't require me to pretend everything turned out fine. If you keep listening, listen as if this isn't advice. Just a late record from someone who spent his entire life making money and now has very little time left to talk about the price of that choice. When I was young, that choice looked completely right. I grew up in a family without much money. Money was always something that had to be calculated. I watched my parents stress over bills over very small shortages. I promised myself my life would be different, that I would never let my family worry about money like that. When I started working, doing more than others didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like pride. I arrived early. I left late. I took on extra work. Every small step forward brought a sense of safety. I thought I'm building a foundation. I'm doing what needs to be done. And society confirmed that belief for me every day. My boss trusted me more. My salary increased. My job title got longer. People started asking me for advice. At that stage, I didn't see myself trading anything away. I only saw myself investing. Time spent today would buy freedom tomorrow. Missed evenings would be repaid with more comfortable years later. I believed in that equation completely. My family believed it too, At least that's what they said. We called it effort, responsibility, a man fulfilling his duty. No one objected. No one stopped me. And when no one tells you you're going too far, you assume you're still on the right path. I don't judge my younger self. I understand him. He wasn't greedy. He wasn't cold. He simply believed that earning first and living later was the reasonable order of life. The problem is, no one told him that later doesn't always arrive. And even when it does, you may no longer be the person strong enough to live fully the way you once imagined. When you're young, when your body is strong and time seems endless, it's very easy to confuse being busy with being meaningful. I lived inside that confusion for many years without realizing it. Then it went on, very naturally, very hard to notice. There was always a milestone ahead. Finish this project first, get through this year. Just a few more years. I kept telling myself that I wasn't slowing down because I didn't want to, but because it wasn't time yet, not safe enough, not enough money, not solid enough. I thought I was being patient. In reality, I was postponing life with discipline. Vacations were delayed, family dinners were late, phone calls were short because I'm busy. I didn't abandon anything completely. I just did everything a little less. Less present, less attentive, less there. And because the absence happened gradually, no one called it a loss. I always had reasons. And the dangerous part was that those reasons sounded right. I was doing it for my family. I was securing the future. I was being responsible. Every time I told myself that I allowed myself to step one pace further away from the present. Later, not yet, just a few more years. Those phrases became my rhythm of life. They allowed me to keep going without facing the harder question, if not now, then when? Time doesn't create space for you to step into life. It only pushes you further away from the life you meant to live. I didn't realize I was drifting from the present because I was always facing a beautifully imagined future. And then, at some point, you look back and realize you became very good at preparing to live without ever truly stopping to live. There is one very small moment I remember more clearly than all the numbers I ever earned. It was a late afternoon. I came home earlier than usual, rare at the time. In the living room, my son was sitting on the floor, his back against the sofa. He was assembling a model kit, completely focused. I stood there for a moment, my briefcase still in my hand, my mind not yet detached from work. He looked up at me, then asked, "Dad, are you busy?" It was a very simple question. No accusation, no pleading, just a genuine question. I looked at my watch out of reflex. A habit. I said Dad just needs to send one last email. He nodded. Very quickly, went back to his model kit. Said nothing more. I sat down at my desk, sent that email, then another one. Then my phone buzzed. And then I forgot why I had come home early in the first place. About 40 minutes later, I returned to the living room. The model kit had been packed neatly back into its box. My son was no longer there. On the floor, there was only a small plastic piece that hadn't been attached anywhere yet. I picked it up, held it in my hand for a moment. There was no argument, no sulking, no complaint. Just a moment that passed without waiting for me to be ready. Years later, I still remember that question, not because it hurt, but because it was so light, that I didn't recognize it as a moment worth holding on to. Some things in life don't disappear because you reject them. They disappear because you ask them to wait a little longer. Now, looking back from where I am, I can see very clearly what I have and what there is no way to get back. I have money. I have a quiet house. I have mornings without an alarm clock. I no longer worry about bills or work. So everything I once told myself, when I have this, I'll live, I now have. The only problem is that when I finally had all of it, I no longer had enough people left to live with in the way I once imagined. My children have grown up. They have lives of their own. They're polite, appropriately caring. They call on the right occasions. But there is a distance that's hard to name. Not estrangement, just a lack of shared memories to pull us closer. The small gaps from long ago have now become places no one steps into anymore. I can't go back to that afternoon. I can't go back to the question, "Dad, are you busy?" I can't go back to the moment when sitting down on the floor would have been enough. Some things can't be made up for with free time later. Some bonds can't be rebuilt once people have learned to live without you. I achieved financial security and lost the feeling of being present in my own life. Now I have a lot of time, but this time is not the same as the time I missed. It's quieter, emptier, and there are far fewer chances for it to turn into vivid memories. Some investments in life yield excellent returns, and some, by the time you realize what you've missed, the interest rate no longer matters. It took me a very long time to admit that I had misunderstood the meaning of success. I used to define success as not having to worry, as having enough money for everything to run smoothly, as never having to say we can't afford it. I believed that if I achieved that, I had fulfilled my role. Now, at 81, that definition feels very poor. I've come to understand that success isn't about how much you have in your hands, but how many moments you're truly present for. Not just physically there, but present with your attention. When you're not checking the time, not thinking about the next email, not saying, just a minute. My old definition was, earn enough money, then live. My new definition, realized too late, is, living is not something you do after you're fully prepared. Money is very good at creating a sense of progress. Every number going up convinces you that you're moving in the right direction. But it's also very good at pushing life to the sidelines with the promise that you'll come back to it later. I believed that promise for too long, not because I didn't value life, but because I thought I was building the foundation for it. And while building that foundation, I stood at the base for so long that I forgot the house was meant for someone to live in. Now that everything is finished, I finally understand that some things shouldn't wait until all the conditions are right to begin. Because when you wait until it's enough, you may no longer be at the age where you can fully feel it. If you're still listening at this point, you may be telling yourself a few familiar things. I'm just trying my best. I'm doing this for my family. It's not time to slow down yet. I said those exact words for many years with the same certainty. If you're working later than you planned, not because you want to, but because you think you have to. If you're postponing non-urgent time with the people you love because you believe you'll make it up later. If you're reassuring yourself that everything is temporary, that once you reach a certain milestone, life will finally open up. I understand that feeling very well. You may believe you're in control, that you know when to stop, that you're different from the stories people tell. You're not neglecting anyone. You're just prioritizing. That's what I called it too. You might be telling yourself that small moments don't matter much, that children will forget, that adults will understand, that you're not disappearing. You're just absent for a bit. But I want you to ask yourself, no need to answer me. Of all the times you've said later, how many times did you truly come back? There were evenings when I was at home, but my mind wasn't there. Meals where I was present, but my attention wasn't. I thought that was enough. I thought presence could be divided as long as the overall picture looked fine. You may be thinking you'll know when things go too far, that at some point the emptiness will grow large enough to make you stop. I waited for that signal for a very long time. It didn't arrive the way I expected. It arrived quietly, when no one was waiting for me to be free anymore, when simple questions stopped being asked, when the people around me learned how not to need me in the moments they once did. I'm not placing my story next to yours to scare you. I'm only setting it beside the very familiar thoughts you may be carrying every day, and letting you see for yourself how closely they resemble each other. I once thought I was different. I believed I was just moving a little faster now, so that I could return to living much more slowly later. I believed that until there was no longer enough time left to test that theory. I also believed I would stop in time. I thought I was clear-headed enough to know when it became too much, that if work truly started taking away the important things, I would notice immediately, that there would be a clear sign, a shock, a crisis, a warning strong enough to force me to change direction. But nothing like that happened. Everything unfolded very smoothly. Income rose steadily. Life became more stable. My family lacked nothing. No one complained loudly. There was no reason serious enough for me to stop and say enough. And that was exactly what made it dangerous. You don't hear an alarm when your life is being traded away piece by piece. You only hear praise. Nods of approval. Words like, just a little more effort will be worth it. I used to think I was different from people who worked themselves into exhaustion. I didn't collapse. I didn't completely neglect everything. I still came home, still provided, still showed up at the minimum level required. I believed that meant I was safe. But I misjudged what was actually being taken. Not my health at first, not my money, but moments that could never be repeated, disappearing without leaving a gap large enough to cause panic. If you're thinking you'll stop before things go too far, I thought that too, very confidently. And I kept going for one more year, then another. Each year came with a perfectly reasonable excuse to continue. Not every mistake feels like a mistake. Some paths lead you very far away from your own life, even though every step feels right at the time. Now, as I come to this final part, I have nothing left to prove. No dramatic turn, no moving redemption, no moment where everything suddenly finds balance. Only one very plain truth. I spent my entire life preparing for life, and when I was finally ready to live, time was no longer on my side. At 81, I'm no longer chasing work. No more late nights. No more urgent emails. I have everything I once believed I needed to live a full life. But the people I imagined living that life with moved to a different rhythm long ago. I don't regret the effort I put in. I only regret that I believed for so long that life could wait. No one tells you that time isn't lost through major events. It's lost through very ordinary days. Days when you say not today. Days when you believe you're doing the right thing, so there's no need to stop. If I could leave you with just one question, it wouldn't be about money. It wouldn't be about success. It would be this. If you stopped today and looked honestly at your life, are you living, or are you only preparing to live on a day you believe will come? And if that day never comes, how will you answer that question when there's no longer enough time left to change the answer?